Want to know some more?
To see some of your favorite content creators and favorite people, honestly, you follow here on this tab. Be a part of this amazing community called the Nerd Initiative.
The Nerd Initiative presents the Comic Press Podcast, hosted by JJ's Comic Stuff.
What is going on, everybody? You are watching or listening to the official Comic Press Podcast. I'm your host, JJ, or JJ's Comic Stuff, or Jeremy, whatever is easiest for you guys to call me. And today we have no Michael. He is on a flight out to California for Shortbox Live. But my very special guest, I've been excited to have him come on because we're from the same area. This is like a hometown guy for me. So everybody, please welcome Victor Dandridge from Vantage House. What's up, man?
What's going on, man? What's going on? Absolute pleasure to be here.
Hanging out, man. Hanging out. I've been excited for this. Like I just said, like you're one of the hometown guys. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, I've heard this guy's name for a long time. I've never met him though. Like I know we go to the same places and all this other stuff.
That's the weird part, right? Like I try to tell people all the time how big and small Columbus is all at the same time. Because I first became aware of you via TikTok, which is the craziest thing, because I would see you and I love the way that you would shoot it when you would go get books and you would go up to Comic Town and like you do like this kind of walk through and head into the doors. And I remember flipping through and I'm like, is that Comic Town? Wait, I know where that is. Wait, what is going on? It was so cool.
Yeah, Ryan appreciated that too. So
of course. So yeah, that was amazing.
But yeah, man. So first thing we like to get into here on this show is the nerd origin story of the guest. So even if it's not like originally comic book related, because I've had a few guys come on where it was like Lord of the Rings when it first, what first became their thing, you know. So what was yours though? What was your nerd origin story? How did you become what you are now?
Comic booky origin story of all time. Okay, get ready. Here we go. Okay, so 30 years ago, this is how this starts. I hated books. Okay, reading was evil. Books were of the devil. You would have to pay me in order to get me to read a book. I just didn't like them. But I was a huge fan of pop culture. I love like 80s movies, music, all kinds of wonderful things like that. So in that regard, that's how I got a lot of my content was pop culture. I would also watch the news because you got to stay informed somehow. But that was really what it was. And way back, I was standing in my living room and they announced on the news that Superman was going to die. And as like, I swear, like that, it had me, bro. It had me because it was like, you know, again, as a pop culture guy and loving movies, especially in the 80s, Superman 4 is my favorite of the bunch. I'm not saying it's a good movie. I'm saying it's my favorite. I always have to qualify that. Like people are like, you like that movie? Yes, because I was a child when I first saw it and it was amazing. But, you know, contextually, that was the thing. Like, how do you kill Superman? I want to read that. And I said that out loud. My mother heard me say this and immediately sprang into action. Okay. She worked at City Center, which for those that aren't, from Columbus, this was a huge 3-level mall downtown, huge destination spot. She was like worked in customer service there. And one of the anchor stores of the mall was Lazarus, AKA Macy's now. On the 5th floor of this Lazarus was a comic shop. And so the next day she goes up on her lunch break, gets a stack of books, comes home, gives them me. None of them are Death of Superman, right? Like I'm such a new to this. So I'm like low-key disappointed because I'm like, I thought I said Death of Superman, but I had no idea that because they said on the news, it's not going to come out for months. Like, had no idea. But she gives me these books and I start reading. Like literally that night, I start reading and I'm hooked. I'm loving the characters. I'm loving the stories. And she got me like a mix of stuff. It wasn't like all DC. It wasn't all Marvel. It was everything. So I'm like taking it in and I'm separating. I'm understanding like, okay, well, this guy's over here. This person's over there. It's not the same. Loving it. Fall in love. I fall in love so much that I started talking about it when I go over to my dad's house that weekend. And he's like, oh, I like comic books. And I'm looking at him like, excuse me, sir, you are the jockiest of jocks that I know. Okay, like football, basketball, like you're that guy. Like we we didn't talk as much because his thing was sports and I was a skinny little kid. Like, don't let these shoulders fool you. These came in through Amazon like a couple years ago. I just ordered these.
I feel your pain, bro.
Yeah,
I'm still waiting on mine. They got lost in the mail.
Listen, it was COVID. COVID's got a backup order, but when yours come in, it'll be dope. It'll be super dope. I highly recommend them. But yeah, I was not a sports guy. Like, under any circumstances was not my thing. And so to hear my father talk about how he was like a nerd, like really into comics. And he's like, not only was I into comics, 3 of your uncles could draw. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So literally opens up like a whole new prospect of my family dynamic. I'm reading, I'm learning about comics, I'm learning about art. The 3 of my uncles, my Uncle Bo, my Uncle Byron, and my Uncle Mark, were really into the idea that I wanted to draw. And my Uncle Mark, the youngest of the bunch, he was really, really keen on it. He was like, you know what? Like, we grew up here in Columbus. And at the time, like, in order to be in the comic book business, you had to be in New York. And it wasn't practical for us to ever like do that. Like, we couldn't do that. So he's like, you're going to figure it out. You're going to figure out how to do this. So I'm like, okay, like, I guess that's what I'm going to be doing.
It's kind of hard to argue with.
I mean, it really kind of is. But then, so this is like, I'm a year into my comics journey and, you know, I'm having fun reading stuff and creating characters, terrible characters that are basically just ripoffs of other things. But, you know, that's what happens. Learning how to draw, you know, things like that. And my Uncle Mark was a victim of violent crime and he died. And it was kind of one of those pivotal things. I'm like 11 years old. My uncle, who was a friend, mentor, you know, beloved family member, has just died. And I'm like, you know what can I do? Like, I can't go out and fight, you know, who hurt him. I can't fix it. I can't bring him back. What I can do is I can promise right now that I'm going to make something of myself in comics in his honor. That's what I'm going to do. So it was awesome. Thank you. It was a very Peter Parker meets Batman, Vow by Candlelight sort of moment. And that was my guiding force from the time I was 11 years old to right now. So that was my origin story. I didn't like to read, and comics changed all that, and then the family dynamic, and here I am.
That's awesome, man. And it's really like, I mean, obviously that's sad that your uncle passed or whatever, but it's the fact that was one of your big motivating factors. Like, you know, there's a lot of people who get motivated by either, oh, I want to be the next Alan Moore, or like it is. That's probably not going to happen for 90%.
No, 95%.
Yeah, so
99.2.
But if you're just trying to like go into it with the mentality of, I just want to make it, that's doable.
Yeah.
And with the right motivation, it's even more doable. And that's a hell of a motivation factor right there that you had. So
thank you. Yeah. And when I say it guided me, like, this happened towards the end of my elementary school days. So going into middle school, I was a little bit of a knucklehead, as most, you know, preteens are. It happens.
I think we all were at one point or another, right?
A million percent. But it guided me into an Arts Impact high school. I went to Fort Hays for both high school and vocational studies. And it just kind of like, it set me on a path, you know, being a Black teenager. And a lot of people will definitely kind of hear this in a weird sort of way, but in the 90s, there was this idea that Columbus was a little bit of a cow town. And so in terms of, I'll just be frank about it, gang culture, we had a lot more people that were actively trying to prove that this was a rougher city. And so it was a little bit more dangerous because you had people overcompensating. Yeah, exactly. Short North, I don't want to name names, but yes. No, like,
I'm not.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, and I grew up on the South Side, and you talk about a strange mix. So like, my mother grew up in a neighborhood called Southfield. It's literally where I live now. I moved back here to be closer to them, close to my grandmother. And my father lived also on the South Side, but not in this particular district. But where like they both grew up, essentially, they would have been rivals, like in terms of high school and everything. And based on where I lived, either with my mom or if I was with my dad, it was 2 rival gang cultures. And I had to be aware of both of those things. And it was, you know, it was Crips and Bloods. And really the only thing that I was really concerned about growing up in terms of Red and Blues was DC and Marvel. Like, that was it. I just, let me argue over that. Like,
right. I'm not worried about what y'all are doing over there.
Yeah. That's not my jam. That's not my jam. And in my truth about it, like it's one of the things that I've spoken up about, and I don't want to necessarily demonize it, but it was one of the things that I always held against Milestone was they had a series called Blood Syndicate.
Mhm.
And the core concept of it was the superpowered gang members. And the thing that I hated, and I have to be very frank about that, I hated it, was recognizing that if I had that book series with me in a certain neighborhood, I could get hurt, if not worse.
Oh yeah.
And it was in the showcasing of gang culture by gentlemen who clearly were not a part of gang culture, hadn't thought of it in
No.
that way. I was very concerned, and it marked milestone for me as, if I'm going to do something that is Black comics, I don't want it to be like that. And that's been a very strong piece of my development as a creator, as a Black creator, especially in terms of what my voice is. There's certain things that I'm a little bit more cognizant of, having grown up at that time period of our responsibility of things to showcase. And, that was a huge piece. I'm 12, 13 years old, and here's this comic book where I'm like, I could never walk around that neighborhood with that book. If they saw it, I'm in trouble. And
Oh yeah.
it was real.
Especially back then in that area. Like
Yes.
I mean, obviously I was a little kid back then in that time, but still, you grow up after the fact, especially if we
You hear
grew up like
stories.
right after, you hear stories from like your older cousins and
Absolutely.
everybody else.
So yeah, that was a part of my formative times. Comics kept me out of trouble. I had friends that were running the streets. That wasn't for me. I had something else. I had a higher thing that I was aiming for. And if at the core of that was the memory of my uncle, so be it. That was an easy thing to kind of go, yeah, nah, I'm cool. Oh man, Vic, you being a punk. You're right, I am. But I'm gonna go read, and that's
Right,
just what
like
it is.
better a punk than in prison or dead. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So I mean,
Exactly.
it's a pretty easy choice if you've
I
got a
mean,
decent set of brains about you.
It seems pretty easy to me, but the amount of my friends that I grew up with that actively were into comics, so few.
Oh, I know, man. Like I was just talking about this with somebody on TikTok today, where it's like I get way more support and like nerd relief from like my online friends than I do my in real life friends.
Oh
Like,
man,
they don't even realize how or understand what I'm doing with this podcast. They think it's just like some little thing I do for fun on the side that
Are you
gets
still
like,
doing the talkie thing with the people?
yeah, like they have no clue. Like they just don't get it.
Yeah. It's a journey. It's a journey. Sometimes it's our journey, and it's not for anybody else to understand.
Right.
And that happens. That's the way of it sometimes. In my journey, I'm very pleased to say that as of this coming October, I will be celebrating 13 years of self-publishing full-time as my job. So
Heck yeah,
it's
dude.
been a wonderful journey, and highly recommend anybody, if you have a goal, dream, creative, or whatever, pursue it and be open to whatever opportunities might come up, because you never know where it'll take you.
Two random kids from Columbus, Ohio, right
There it
here
is.
shows you.
That's
Like,
real. That's so real.
because 3 years ago I was doing nothing basically. Pandemic hit, TikTok. I met a couple people that worked for Nerd Initiative that were starting it up, and
Right.
boom, now it's turned into craziness.
Listen,
So
I love what you guys are doing. You are connecting people through your insight, your interest, and it's a wonderful thing to see you guys share that love with everybody. So totally dig that. Absolutely.
well, and like little plug for the company real quick.
Of course.
Like, the online community when it comes to comic books and just nerd stuff in general and fandoms, like I'm sure we've all noticed, it gets really toxic at times,
yeah.
which it's never made much sense to me. Excuse me while I fidget with my lights here,
No worries.
everybody. But it's never made much sense to me, because it's like most of us grew up being made fun of and picked on for the stuff that we're into now, right?
Exactly.
And now that it's cool, all these kids who used to get bullied all the time are all of a sudden bullying each other, and it
Here's on the other
just
foot.
does not make any sense to me
Yeah, it's
at
not
all.
good.
It's like, what that feels like. Why would you do that
Right.
to somebody?
And yet we see it happen so often. It hurts. It really hurts. That's why I try to create a culture of inclusivity and bringing people in. Because again, there is that thing that happens where, what's I can't think of the experiment where there's people that were guards and there were people that were prisoners.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I forget
yeah,
the
like,
name of it, but
it's immediately that same sensation when those of us that were ostracized for our geeky love are suddenly, the kings of things. Now we're like, oh, well, now I'm going to show you. Like, we shouldn't do that. We have to be very careful about that mindset.
And that's why I like you guys over there at Vantage Inhouse. That's why I teamed up with everybody here at Nerd Initiative. Like, everybody's got that same goal, like try and get rid of that toxic energy, because
Yes.
It's an old saying, right? You catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar.
Absolutely. And I think
your follower count doesn't matter. Your view count doesn't matter. It's if you're kind to people and you put yourself out there, good things are going to happen.
Absolutely.
Period.
Like, that is the key, the absolute key. And yeah, if anybody in the audience is watching and this is something that you want to be a part of, do it. Do not wait. Do not ask for permission. Start doing stuff. Like, that is,
you don't know how to do something, message somebody who does know how to do it.
Yeah. And ask, even if it's not even a matter of asking, will you show me how? Ask questions of, how do you do this? If you tell me how you do it, I can take the ball and run with it and figure out some stuff on my own. But that's kind of the thing, is I have to get started by acknowledging, hey, I see you. I like what you do. How do you do that?
100%. And then it just snowballs from there. Like, the closed mouth does not get fed.
Never. Oh God, I say this all the time. It's such an important.
If you don't speak up and ask, you're never going to get it. You're never going to get a yes.
That's right. And sometimes that's all you need to get started. It's just that first yes.
That's 100%. So, Vantage Inhouse.
Yes.
How did this come about? How long have you guys been around? What, give us the history and goal and mission of Vantage.
Okay, so with Vantage Inhouse, I'm the sole proprietor. So I'm the mind, the brains, the money behind a lot of anything that happens through Vantage Inhouse Productions. And the idea behind it was literally this. I was working for the state of Ohio, cushy state job, and could not stand it. Like, I was literally like, you know what? This isn't where I need to be. I get it. It's I've got children, I had family, like the whole nine.
It's a steady paycheck.
Right. But I'm like, but this isn't where I'm supposed to be. This isn't what I want to do. And I was 28 years old. And I'm like, you know what? I'm leaving. I'm going to quit the state. I'm going to cash out my retirement. And I'm going to try to give this a go for 3 years. And if I can get this to work over the course of 3 years and keep it going, then I've done my thing. If it doesn't work, I'll only be 31. I can come back into the private sector, work, put in my 30 years and retire a happy guy. Because I tried,
Right.
The term Vantage Inhouse, Vantage came from a comic character that I had created while I was writing for Freestyle Comics. Big shout out to Mike Watson, one of my best friends. He was where I started writing through his flagship title, Hot Shot. And
now that's another Columbus.
Oh yeah.
Pretty too, isn't it?
Oh yes.
Okay, I was gonna say I've seen his stuff all over the place.
Absolutely. If there's one thing Mike is great at, you will hear of him. Like, there is no two ways about that. He makes noise in the best way possible. But Vantage was a character that I had modeled after myself, but had never gotten a chance to actually bring him into the storylines and stuff. So it was always kind of something in the back of my head, especially once I looked at the definition. It's a favorable position. And there's a lot of my career that's been kind of spent where I looked at how comics are made and how people are talking about how comics are made. And I go, I think we can do that better. I think we're not like really pushing ourselves to the extreme for this one. It started off when, for my very first self-published, strictly by myself book ever, it came about where there was a panel on independent publishing at Mid-Ohio 2009. And I wasn't invited to be on this panel, which is my own little gripe about that. But there were some voices on this panel that were overtly negative, specifically when it came to the cost of making comics. Like, oh, it's so expensive, to print, blah, blah, blah. And this is right around the time where Kablam and Indie Planet were starting to really kind of come into our consciousness as a tool to use for print on demand and publishing. And so I'm like, I think I hear what you're saying, and I'm not saying that what you're saying isn't true, but it doesn't have to be true. And you guys are speaking like it has to be true.
Right.
And I wrote an article series kind of like challenging that. And they're like, well, prove it. And I did. Like, I was able to make a comic that was like immediately profitable. Didn't make a lot of money, but the statement was immediately profitable. It didn't actually cost me anything, which was the hook. So having that Vantage frame of mind, I was like, that's what I want to be in the business. I want to be the guy that comes at it and goes, you're right, but can we do this better? Can we look at it a different way?
You need that other vantage point.
Another vantage point. Exactly. Obviously in-house is because I make books from my home. Like, this is my office. And since I'm working from home, I want to keep things in-house. This is what I want to do. I want to build my community. I want to, all the people that I initially started working with were folks that I knew, had kind of come into the business with. So trying to keep that system in-house was very, very important to me to start. It was my localized kind of space. I had the opportunity to call it, Vantage In-House Comics, but I didn't want the acronym to be VIC. That's too close to my name. Instead, I thought Productions, one, it would give me the opportunity to create anything that I wanted, whether it's comics, books, movies, whatever I want, I can create under Productions. And then I can use the moniker VIP, which kind of creates the sense that things are high profile. There's a value to it that's inherent because you're getting the VIP treatment. So that's kind of where Vantage In-House as a term came from.
Okay, so, and I've noticed like that's got to be how you manage to keep your prices so low, man.
Absolutely.
I was looking on your website this morning, just kind of scrolling through and looking at stuff, trying to get a sense of everything, and I'm like, these are like really cheap. And they're physical copies.
Yes,
like that's the thing. Like a lot of guys on their websites, you'll get a digital PDF for that same price, or if not more.
Yeah, no, we want readers. That's the biggest thing for me. I recognize at this place in my career that sometimes the products that we're selling are essentially lost leaders. If we're not getting more people into the fold and, risking it all in order to get them, then we're not doing our job. And, we're losing numbers steadily. If you're looking at the comics readership over the last 10, 15 years, it's dropping. And the thing that makes that so frustrating is if you look at the comic movies, those are, hitting new heights all the time, billions of dollars. How are we not connecting, those threads?
And see, that's strange because I see new people coming into the hobby all the time.
Right.
So the numbers there's something weird going on there because the numbers don't reflect what we see.
Right. And I think one of the biggest things about it, for me personally, is that there hasn't been as much of a concerted effort to bring in kids back to the fold. I think a lot of times what we're seeing are a lot of older people that have watched the show, watched the movie, and they're like, this is interesting, and they'll come through, but we're not seeing kids. And there's such a huge necessity for that, that, I'm like, nah, I'm going to solve that. If that's the thing that's needed, then that's what I'm here for. And that's part of my mission statement under Vantage In-House, is to create the next generation of readers and creators. So that's our focus.
And because you guys do have kids titles on your website, I've
Absolutely.
noticed there's like kid friendly stuff. There's adult only stuff. There's, there's a little bit of something for everybody on there. Absolutely.
That's one of the big things for us is we want you to find a place within our library. All of our books by design, and this is kind of a living design, if you will, they were all meant to be standalone titles, right? Each series is supposed to be able to stand all on its own and cater to a specific readership. So for our all ages group, we have Wonder Care Presents the Kinderguardians that I do with Justin Castaneda. Fantastic book. It's Muppet Babies meets the Justice League.
I've actually read a couple issues randomly. I don't even know how I got them. I think somebody may have gave them to me. But...
Absolutely. It was probably Scott up at Comic Town, without question.
Probably.
He was like, read these. Then we go into teens for Origins Unknown. We have our young adult stuff, which is The Trouble with Love. And then The Samaritan is our core adult mature title. What I love about the concept of each of these being standalone is that if you started off as a kid, and maybe you like the writing, as you got older, we had a new title that you could read and kind of get introduced to, and it kind of grew with you. That was the plan initially. Over the last few years, we've actually seen places and spaces where the titles could interconnect and create like a shared multiverse. So I've been building that as of lately. So the last run of books that I've been doing is all about tying together those original 4 and creating a bigger tapestry for what this universe is, so people can kind of bounce around and explore all kinds of wonderful things that we're creating as you know, for all ages stuff, teens, young adults, matures. Like, we're creating something for as many different people as possible and try to find different ways that they can jump into it.
Yeah, because that's one thing I've noticed at not a lot of shops around here, but well, one shop in particular that I won't name. But I'm assuming you could probably guess if I
I'll
gave you
bet I
3
can.
guesses. But there's some places that are not very welcoming to
Yes.
new people. Or if they are, they don't make it obvious that they are. You walk
Right.
in, the place is, you know, dark.
Mhm.
It's hard to find stuff. The people don't really say hi to you. They don't want to talk to you. Every time you do ask them a question, they're like, ugh,
You're
you know, like,
bothering me.
yeah,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
where then you like walk into somewhere like Comic Town or Laughing Ogre. These guys I will name because they're worth naming. You walk in there, the first thing all of them say is, "Hey, how's it going?"
Yeah. Yeah. They greet
You
you.
walk into Laughing Ogre, the girls behind the counter, "Hey, what are you into? What can I help you find today?"
That's right. That's right. Big shout out
Like,
to Gabe and all the girls there. They're fantastic.
and one thing I tell people to look for in a comic shop when they're trying to find their first one or a new one is if they don't have a kids section and they don't have any female employees, or at least make an attempt,
That says a
then
lot.
it's probably a bad sign.
It says a whole lot, because if they're not catering to audiences other than the dude bros, it's gonna bring in a certain clientele, and that's gonna be the air in the room. And if that's not you, then it's not you. You don't want that. You
No,
definitely
it turns into the owner's clubhouse at that point.
Yes, yes. And you know those shops. You've been to those shops and you never feel welcome at
I'll
those
say
shops.
there's only one in Columbus that I've encountered, and it's not too far from where I currently am.
I know where you are. Yep.
Yeah,
I know exactly what
I
you're
think
talking
you
about.
know exactly which store I'm talking about. But like I said, we won't name them because they're not
Yeah,
worth
yeah, yeah.
naming.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
That's
but
unfortunate. It's
yeah,
those are one of those things where, again, for those people that aren't familiar with Columbus, when again I talk about the scale and size of our city, we have like 6 or 7 comic shops in our greater Columbus area. But again, one of the things that I'm actively aiming for is that none of those shops cater to the south side of the city. And so, like,
there's one retro guy down there, but
uh
he's only
in Grove
someone's
City.
yes.
Yeah, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
I always forget the name of that place. but
Skylark. Skylark
There it
is
is.
the name
Yep.
of it. Yep. But that's technically Grove City, which you couldn't get to without crossing a freeway.
Mhm.
So, like, in the South Side where I grew up, even there is no comic shop that caters to that area. And the thing that's so insane about that is that's where Jeff Smith, the creator of Bone, lives. He
Mhm.
lives in German Village, and
It would
there
be
are no
such a hot spot if they just plopped a shop in the middle of town down there.
no one has ever come down here, like, not as an official shop, not since Southland Mall closed, where we had a British paper mill down there. Yeah, that's how far back. That's I mean, we're talking almost 20 years at this point.
Yeah.
That was the last time that we had a comic shop for the South Side. So those are things that I'm actively trying to work within, work against, if you will, to kind of boost the signal. Like, let people know, like, there's a culture here. There's stuff for Black
Go to
kids.
any convention in Columbus, even the small ones are packed.
Huge, huge.
You go to
So
one little one-day convention that's $5 to get into, and there's
people there.
2,000 people in there.
People there. Big shout out to Buckeye Con. It's a great local one that is smaller in scale, but brings people in, especially if you're a collector. Great spot. And that's the other thing. Like, we have a ton of conventions here. Even more like are coming. Like, we've got Animate Columbus, which is a showcase of animation. So anime, actual like TV animation and film and video games.
That one's being run by GalaxyCon, right? Because
Yep.
GalaxyCon's coming in December.
That's right. That's right. So they're doing some big things here at a local level.
Gem City
then,
Comic Con in Dayton.
there you go.
I'll be at
Central
that
Ohio
one.
right there. Oh, see, I can't be there this year. For the second year in a row, I believe they're going up against San Diego. So yeah,
I can't make it all the way out to San Diego. So.
I mean, don't say can't, because you never know. I might bring you with me next year. I'll just throw that out there.
Hey,
I'm trying to grow my outreach.
I wouldn't be opposed to that.
So, yeah, that's right. That's right.
All right. Well, let's get into this book a little bit, man,
Yes,
because
yes.
I don't want to give people away too much because I want people to actually go and read it
Of course. I'm all for
be-
spoiling it though.
because it's great. I'm
Thank
really
you.
liking it so far, and that is Never Too Late.
Yes, yes.
Give us a quick synopsis of this. Tell us about the team working on it besides yourself,
Of
obviously
course.
writing.
So big shout out to Harold Edge and Juan Cho. They are the line artists and colorists respectively for this series. Never Too Late is the sequel to The Trouble with Love. And The Trouble with Love is a one shot that Harold Edge initially worked with me on. And big shout out to Ryan Carter, who was the colorist for that one. And it was a very personal story to me. If you read it, you'll see it. And it's essentially the core is our Superman. His name is Apex Prime, has a wife and a family, but then falls in love with someone else. And years later, he's called on the carpet by his son, and it's like, why did you make the choices that you made? And there's a huge reveal at the end of The Trouble with Love. And Never Too Late is Apex Prime's response to that reveal. How about that for not spoiling anything? He's risking something really huge, an opportunity to go back through time. But there's a prophecy of sorts that is suggested that if he does this, he's opening the doors for some other things, but he risks it anyway. And this is, one man's attempt to challenge the bounds of time and space to save the family he left behind. It's one of those things where you recognize that, relationships are tricky, very, very tough, but sometimes a hero is willing to do seemingly horrible, if not impossible things in order to save those that he loves. And that's the reality of this story.
Yeah, man, it's so well written too,
Thank you.
because when it first started off, you see the gauntlet, and like the first thought in your head is Infinity
Of
Gauntlet,
course, of course.
but it's not that at all.
Right.
Like it's actually very different, and I love it when people can take something like that looks similar and put a twist on it that you weren't really expecting.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That was a huge challenge for this story, especially considering that this side of things, Never Too Late, is 4 times the size of the initial story of The Trouble with Love. So, one of the things that we got in terms of feedback, especially me as the writer, was, the best compliment critique any writer could ever get is, I wanted more. I wanted to see what happens next. I wanted this. I wish you didn't stop here. And that was kind of, the battery in my back that I needed to go, well, let me tell this other part of the story. And I'm super excited that through the Kickstarter that I just ran, the big bundle, we will finish this story this year. So like people will be able to get the entire 4 issues by the end of this year. And it'll be a huge showcase that sets up something way bigger on the horizon called No Win. And
I'm excited for that because I've seen the teasers for that, and I'm like, oh, this sounds pretty cool. Like,
I mean, it's one of those things where I if I'm gonna do it, I gotta go big. There's no
you might
point
as well.
Right. There's no point in being quiet. Like, no, let's make some noise. Let's ruffle some feathers. Let's tell stories that everyone wants and everyone also is too afraid to ask for. I'm gonna tell those stories. Like, let's do it. So but I'm glad that you're liking Never Too Late. Is there a character that you are connecting with in particular?
Not really. I'm just really enjoying the overall like theme of it. One guy, what would you do if you had the ability to go back in time and save somebody that you loved? And like that's what this dude is struggling with in the first issue. Like, do I do this? And now that I've tried to do this, where do I go from here? How do we go about actually doing this? Like he leapt before he thought.
Yes. And emotions do that, right? That is one of those things that for me, the story context here is to focus more on the man than the super, because that's really where the stories lie. Even if you go back to the best Superman stories, they're always when it's about, how Clark feels or how Kal-El feels versus the superpower aspect. Like that's the thing that really connects with people. And I think it's amazing. This scene in particular, I love. If you guys can tell, he meets a past variant version of himself when he does this time travel thing. And it like almost immediately is hilarious. And the context of, what one is doing versus the other kind of brings out so much personality and kind of shows the difference of where these two versions of the same guy are based on experience. And I think that's one of the biggest and best things about that is, if you just talk to yourself from yesterday and impart all the things that you learned, in the last 24 hours to that person, you would make something so very interesting and so very different.
I was going to say, because the time difference is only hours.
Right. But that could still be huge.
And he still doesn't recognize himself.
Exactly.
Like
exactly.
that, he doesn't believe it's a future version of himself. He keeps like saying, no,
He's
you're,
like,
you're lying to me. Like,
you're a robot.
You're literally looking at yourself. Like,
you can verify on so many different levels.
Right.
And he's still like, because that's where he is. As a person, he's old Apex, or Tom as we call him in this one, is more suspicious. He hasn't had the conversations from the Trouble with Love that put him in this place that Apex is in. So it's kind of a fun place to write. It's great storytelling, and I am so beyond lucky to work with talents like Harold and Wancho to bring this to life, because when it comes to talented individuals, they are top notch. Like their ability to tell story is so high. Like there's things that I thought I was writing a phenomenal story, and I got back and I was like, I just had a sketch compared to what you guys just gave me. Like, oh my god, like the impact. Issue 3, Harold just finished up the artwork on issue 3, and we're getting that colored. Or no, I'm sorry, no, Wancho's finished coloring that. We're working on 4, but Harold said that 3 was emotional for him to draw. Like he was like getting into the story and seeing like where this is going. He's like, this was tough. Like this was tough to put down, because he was going through the emotions of this story along with the characters. And I'm like, again, huge compliment as a writer. Like that's everything that you want. And it takes you on a journey.
And like I said, I've only read issue 1 so far, so I'm excited to get into issue 2 and 3. Like, well, that's why another thing. I was like, I don't want to spoil this for people, because I want people to enjoy it like I am, and
yes,
go and get it. That way, you can actually figure out what the heck we're talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a big one. Again, for everyone that supported my most recent Kickstarter, the big bundle, where we had 10 comics over 6 issues, 6 titles, we'll say, coming out throughout the rest of the year. It starts with Never Too Late #2. That's one of the first books. But we're doing seasonal drops. So we're doing like a summer drop, fall drop, winter drop. And by the time you get to the winter drop, you will definitely have all 4 issues of Never Too Late available. But then the best part about it is, again, interconnecting these titles and building this bigger shared universe. So Apex Prime makes an appearance in issue 2 of Point of Authority Family Ties, another book that branches off from the Origins Unknown series. And we're going to see him appear in that. And so now we're kind of building up a little bit of presence for Apex Prime and his placement within the greater Vantage Inhouse universe. And we're going to play around with showcasing that for different characters over the next few issues.
That's so cool, dude. I'm so glad there's somebody in my area doing something like this, because with as big as an audience as there is here in Columbus, there's not a lot of guys doing stuff.
You know what? It's more in the lines of what style of comics I like, which is, again, more superhero stuff. Columbus has almost marketedly become something a little bit more alternative and underground in terms of what they like. And when I say like we're home to some greats, we really are. Like Daryl Banks, co-creator of Kyle Rayner, the Green Lantern, born and raised here. This is my art dad, so I got big love for him. Chris Sprouse, who has worked with the likes of Alan Moore and a ton of amazing people. He's here. He's doing a bunch of... I got a
poster that he did last year for Free Comic Book Day with Odefell.
Yes.
Did you get that? Did you manage to get a hold of one of those? They only made 20 of them.
Yeah, I didn't get one of those. I'm kind of upset. I'm mad that
I got the pack rats early.
I'm not mad. Actually, I don't know if you can see it. So behind me, like about right there, is an original Tom Strong logo that I got from Chris back in the Mid-Ohio days. And what was crazy was I was standing there waiting, and I had this like goofy sketchbook. And it was, I mean, I'm a kid, like late teens maybe. And I'm standing there waiting for like maybe half an hour because he's like talking to people and he's doing some stuff. And he finally gets to me and he's like, "What is it that you wanted?" And I was like, "I just want you to do the Tom Strong logo in my sketchbook." And he's like, "That's it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like that's all I want is the Tom Strong logo." And he's like, "All right, well, hold on." And he like digs through some papers and finds like an actual full-on page where he has an inked version of it and gives it to me, as well as doing the piece in my sketchbook. So
That's so
I always
cool.
got Chris near me. Big shout out to his wife Zan, who is one of my most favorite people
I met both of them at Pack Rats last year. They're both super nice people.
Love them, absolutely love them. So yeah, Columbus is a hub for comics. I mean, we've got the Billy Ireland Cartoon Research Library. We've got so many different institutions that support comics. But the truth is, superhero comics are a little bit on the back burner. I'd also be remiss if I don't give a big shout out to Dan Leister, one of my best good friends. He worked on Hack Slash. He's worked on all kinds of stuff. Big shout out to him too. And yeah, we've got all kinds of folks that are doing stuff. Just our local community is more geared towards another side of comics than what some of us are actively participating in. So that's the hard part.
Yeah, because the one indies that I do see go a lot around here, especially like at Comic Town, are like the indie horror titles.
Yes, yeah.
Like that seems to be Michigan and Ohio seems to be fixated on horror stuff.
We like dark stuff.
And we do. It's I don't know what it is about this area of the country, but it breeds weirdos, man.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, and if we don't embrace it, then it's our fault. But no, I mean it's true. Like, and
they just had a big horror convention, like what was it, a week ago?
Yeah, huge. I do believe that horror is going to be one of the new things that GalaxyCon is going to bring to the table at some point. So yeah, did I freeze? I think my computer.
I think your
glitched.
Camera may have glitched out a little bit.
It totally did. Hold on, let me see. Am I back now?
It's getting there.
It's going.
It's
slow.
trying.
Okay, all right. Say like it just flashed real quick for me. So hopefully, as long as the mic's still running, that's not.
Yeah, I mean we can still hear you, so that's the important part.
So yeah. Finding the audience is always the challenge, but that's true of any comic creator. So if where you are isn't necessarily geared towards already loving what you do, see what you can do to create that drive. That's one of the big things for me right now through my U Cre-8 Comics line, which is all about like helping kids specifically make their own comics. I'm actually doing something in my neighborhood because again, there are no comic shops down here. So I'm starting a mail order system.
I was just about to start asking you about this education side of stuff that you do, man.
It's a perfect sort of segue.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I'm doing a mail order system for the kids in my neighborhood to get them art supplies, things that will help, encourage them to start creating stuff. Because again, kids who make comics read comics, and kids who read comics can read anything. So as part of our functionality, that's the thing. If you don't find your audience, create it, or be willing to travel and see where your audience can be. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's one of the big things that we creators here, especially the more superhero oriented creators in Columbus, we're apt to do that. We'll go out of town and we'll hit a bunch of shows and find our audience.
Oh yeah, like I think that's another thing that's kind of ingrained into people from Columbus is that you got to grind to make things work.
That's right. We hustle
because ain't nothing come here easy in this town, man.
Not at all. Not at all.
It feels like the city itself does everything it can to make you not succeed with things. So
and when you do, that's when it's the greatest feeling ever. Because
100%.
You're like, I fought against the stream. Like it couldn't stop me. I refused, and that's a big deal.
100%, man. But yeah, like, so go into a little bit more detail of, the workshops that you help run and, how you're trying to get the next generation kick-started.
Of course. So recognizing that, again, I was a kid that didn't like to read traditional material, which didn't necessarily have an effect on me in school. But how much better would school have been for me if I got to integrate projects like comics into my everyday learning? So with that in mind, I started U Cre-8 Comics. That's the letter U, CRE8 comics.com. But the whole point was to get more kids to be hands-on about creating their own comics. There's this thing that we did, back in the day, like, well, when I grow up, I want to be ... Who said you had to wait? Like, nobody said you had to wait. Let's start doing that now. Looking at it, as a kid of the 80s, and especially 80s movies, we had a lot of movies where it was the kids that were the heroes, and it was because they weren't willing to wait till they were older to make an impact on their community or whatever. You gotta try it now. And so my thing is to tell kids you can do it right now and give you the tools to show you how. I will be that example that you can point at and go, that guy does it, but I'm going to give you the tools and say, these are what I use to do this. And now you can do it, and you don't have to wait till you're my age. You can be much better than me and do it, at 10, 11, 12, like jump at it. Because there is an educational, outlet to it. I get invited to schools, libraries, all kinds of institutions. I'm at Comic Cons a lot doing it and getting to showcase how valuable comics are as art, literature, and education material. So it's one of the greatest things that I've ever stumbled into, and I'm so humbled and happy that I can push that brand.
Well, and we need more of that, especially in this town, because Columbus has been cutting art programs left
Yes.
and right over the last few years.
Yes.
And so the more people that are doing your kind of stuff, which you're trying to do, the better.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, it's not even a matter of you having a particular skill set. I'm showing kids how to draw. I personally identify as a writer. I can draw, but it's not the best of my skill sets. But
I can give you stick people all day.
You know what? And I will show you how to maximize your stick people. We can.
There we go.
maximize
We can tag team a stick people comment, man.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, is to get people to step outside of their comfort zone and not make it a statement of oh, you have to have extreme excellence in order to teach. You just have to be interested. And if you're interested and let people explore, you'd be amazed at what kind of stuff can actually come about from that. So I'm all for the idea of just getting hands-on and making stuff. I will show you some ideas, and then you take it from there and just go. And whatever you create is yours. We're in an age of IP where, there are billion-dollar franchises based off of old comics. What if you're the next one? What if you get a percentage of ownership of $1 billion IP? You're set generationally for a long time.
I was say you never know what the next Invincible is going to be. You never know what the next freaking Walking Dead's going to be.
Exactly.
Kirkman's a prime example of that.
Absolutely. And obviously, I'm an Invincible fan. You can see Omni-Man and Invincible.
Oh, I got an issue number 1 sitting over here that my buddy Comic Tom sent me not too long ago.
Love it. Yes, absolutely. Big shout out to Ryan Otley as well, one of my pals. But yeah, Kirkman is a great example of what happens when you just try stuff. What is the
Nobody expected Walking Dead to do what it did?
Nobody. But if he didn't try it, it never would have done it. And even when it goes back to, take it back. You never know. You could create the next Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and the amount of iterations that has had, especially from its original onset and being open to that, so much stuff. So as long as you're creating something, it gives you the opportunity to create something huge for yourself, by yourself, and you don't have to wait or ask for permission to do it. And that's really what we're trying to push with that.
That's so freaking awesome. We need more of you in the world, man.
Bless you.
100%. So before we get out of here, because I don't want to take you up your entire evening, where can people find you at? Where can people find Vantage Inhouse? I don't know why I keep trying to say Vantage House.
Everybody does it. It's not your fault. It's not your fault at all. But no, you guys can find me on pretty much every form of social media. At Vantage Inhouse is me specifically. Definitely my link tree is the easiest way to find different things. We've got I'm on Patreon, and through Patreon, I specifically set up a store through Square that has extended discounts. So it's like approximately 60% off of cover price for my Patreon members, which
is already insanely cheap to begin with. So
again, if you're supporting me through Patreon, I want to give you even more means and easier means to support me in books and things like that. So it's not about cash grabs and things like that. I want the experience of you as my readers, as my friends, and my fans. That's more important to me than anything. Again, U Cre-8 Comics is huge thing. I'm loving that one. One of the things I will tell you is that I'm rolling out a new initiative for the kindergartens, where we're going to aim for up to 4 format styles for each issue that we've done. We've got 12 issues total that are available. So we're going to have our individual comics that are out. we're also going to do a digital format that we're going to put on a trading card. So we're going to aim for more collectability with a QR code that takes you to a space where you can download that comic book and read it.
Okay.
The goal here is for kids to share it. If you get the comic and there's a card in there, you give it to your friend who doesn't have that issue, and now they get to read it with you. And now the two of you are now active readers, and the more people that are reading it, the more popular and prominent the kindergartens become. And that's really what we want. Again, it's not about the money. We want you
Right.
reading, and that's a huge thing.
And with kids, man, every kid's got a phone in their hand now.
Exactly. And for those kids that are not necessarily comic book minded, cool. We're going to do a chapter book style version of it where we're taking the issues, breaking down the panels, and actually using prose oriented text to tell you the same story. So again, it's just different formats of the same content. So that way we find our audience. No matter what, we're going to find you. Whether it's regular comics, digital comics, or books, we're going to find you. So that's going to be one of our new initiatives moving forward, is maximizing how we can get more readers and trying to do as many things as possible as we can to do that.
Heck yeah, man. I love it.
Thank you.
So once again, everybody go follow Victor Dandridge everywhere. You can find him on social media, pretty much on every app these days. Let's see here. Go and check out vantageinhouse.com. I said it right that time.
There you go.
And if you guys want to check out Never Too Late, I highly recommend it. And I don't recommend things unless I actually enjoy them. So Never Too Late book 1, you can scan that QR code right there at the bottom of the screen and get sent directly to the shop page for it. And I believe it's only like $2.99.
Get it, jump on it.
That's right. I mean, you guys can't beat a book that cheap. You can't.
I mean, trying to get you reading it. That's what our goal is.
If you feel polite enough and kind enough to follow me on all my nonsense that's not part of this, you can follow me at JJ's_comic_stuff everywhere on social media. Make sure you go to nerdinitiative.com where you'll find all of our other content as far as interviews, articles, reviews, previews. We got a little bit of everything. We've got nerd news, we've got fandoms, we've got a new show now called Memory Card, which is dedicated to vintage video games. The first episode of that just aired the other day, so make sure you guys go check that out on the YouTube channel as well. I think I'm out of things to plug, so if that's the end of it, everybody, please be safe, be kind, and